Hi everybody, this is Dr. Fu. So a student asked me how to remember things that we learn in class. I want to share with my experience and also some knowledge that I learned by teaching neuroscience about memory. So based on neuroscience, memory has three major steps: encoding, storage, and retrieval. So encoding is the process where information is transferred into a format that can be stored in your brain. And this can be visual, can be audio, can be a sensational feeling. Um, and then the second step is storage. That refers to holding that information either in long-term or short-term memory. So you store them in the brain, which is in certain neurons. And then the last step is retrieval, which is also called recall. And that occurs when you try to access the stored information. And these three process actually loops in daily life. So let's say if you remember something and then it's time for you to recall it, you need to use it. And then when you recall it, you're like, wait, I don't remember, which means the storage failed, right? In that situation, you have to go back to the encoding, encode again, and store it, and then next time you retrieval, and then you go this loop again. And sometimes you may also find when you recall information, you feel like, oh, the way that I remember it is not efficient. That means your encoding is not efficient. You probably go there, change the way that you encode information. So the more loops you go through these three steps, the more efficient your memory about that information will be. So that's why when some people do the same thing again and again, they are very efficient. Not only in terms of memorize them, but also when they can recall them really fast because everything they did there is very efficient, is being optimized, right? And during these three steps, the most mentally challenging part requires a lot of computing power is the encoding part. So that is when your professor is explaining you in class the materials and you have to understand them first. And then you are going to translate them into the language, into the image that you can understand, you can relate to in your daily life or in your previous memory, your previous life experience. And that is not easy. That's take a lot of energy. That's I would say that's the most painful part of these three storage, these memory steps. And then the most emotionally challenging part is when you recall, you find you forget. That is very mentally challenging. It's sometimes can be frustrating, right? You like, oh, I remember it, but now I can't recall it, I forget it, right? In order to prevent this, you just have to review things before you forget them. And sometimes if you review things, like just right before you forget them, and you surprise yourself, you're like, wait, I was expecting me to forget them, but actually I remembered. And actually, you know what? That can be very rewarding. It can trigger some dopamine release that can make you feel like, oh, I accomplished something. So that's why some people will say learning is kind of very rewarding because they find it the right time to review the materials. Okay, so I want to share the most effective and enjoyable way to learn college materials. That is to review your note 2 or 3 times within the week of your class or your lecture. So you notice I said review your note. I didn't say review the PowerPoint or review the textbook. I say review the note because the note is how do you encode the class materials based on your knowledge. It's like a personal tutor for yourself. So you have to review the note. And then this note is rely on your previous knowledge, your understanding of the materials, and this is solely personal. So different person will have different note. If your note is the same as your neighbor's note, it's probably not effective. So I'll give you an example. So in my note, I wrote nose is forward to eye. No, nose is forward to eye. Okay, so what does this mean? You probably don't understand, right? But it means I wrote this one to help me to remember which cranial nerves number one, which is number two. Okay, so olfactory nerve is connected to the nose, and that is cranial number one, and the optic nerve goes to the eye, which is cranial nerve number two. So nose is forward to the eyes. That help me to remember which is number one, which is number two. If I show that to you, you probably, oh, that there you have a grammar error. It should be supposed nose forward to eyes instead of nose forward to eye. So I have a lot of grammar. I ignore them because I want to focus on the part that help me to remember things. So my point is, you have to have your note tailored to your memory. They are yours. Other people cannot use them. And sometimes, if you see from others' perspective, it is even wrong. So, by review these notes will help you to remember your encoding process. So overall, the point that I have is, in order to learn efficiently, effectively, you just have to review your note frequently, which means 2 or 3 times within the week that you take lecture. If you waited too long, you forget everything, you have to do the encoding again, which is going to be very time consuming. You don't want to do that, right? Okay, so this something that I want to share with you today, and these are just my thought and my theory. I could be wrong, but I will update and refine my theory as time goes. So the goal of me is to share the tips or my understandings and help everybody to learn efficiently and effectively. So feel free to give me comments and feedbacks. And have a good day. Bye bye.